Chapter 258. In a study in the backyard, Yang Chendong sat upright and looked straight ahead, waiting for Su Yozhen to be brought here. As soon as he looked up, he saw the Duke of Loyalty, who was only 20 years old. He didn't know why, but there was a sense of respect in his bones. He immediately clasped his fist and said, "Su Yozhen has seen Duke Yang." "Ha, Lord Su is not an outsider. Please take a seat." Yang Chendong smiled and pointed at the chair in front of him. He released a wave of pressure with every movement. When it reached Su Yozhen, he obediently sat down on the chair. Looking at this assistant minister in his early 40s, Yang Chendong could even see a trace of ambition and desire for power and money in his eyes. He wasn't afraid of other people's thoughts. He was only afraid that they didn't know what he was thinking. Only when he knew the other party's goal would he be able to cater to the other party's desires and use his abilities to help the other party rise. "Lord Su, our time is limited. I've come to ask you something. You should have heard about Yu Xiong's matter, right? What are your thoughts?" Yang Chendong went straight to the point. In his opinion, talking about feelings with Su Yozhen was purely superfluous. If you couldn't give enough benefits to such a person, he was afraid that even if you said more words to win her over, she wouldn't acknowledge you after you left the house. It was even possible that she would sell you. When Su Yozhen heard Yang Chendong's straightforwardness, she was stunned at first, but she soon recovered her natural state. On the way here, Su Yozhen had seriously considered the reason why Yang Chendong wanted to see him. In the end, he concluded that it was because of Yu Xiong. How could it be so easy to wrestle with the current Minister of Justice? Although he had been promoted very quickly and was now the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, his foundation was still too shallow. If he didn't make any great contributions, he would probably stay in this position for 10 or 20 years, or even his entire life. It was precisely because she knew her own situation that Su Yozhen hoped to have an opportunity to perform, and the matter between Yang Chendong and Yu Shiriwei was undoubtedly an opportunity. As long as she performed well, it was possible to gain a lot of benefits from it. Therefore, when Yang Chendong asked the question, Su Yozhen only hesitated for a moment before bluntly saying, "Yu Xiong is extremely daring. He actually dares to have crooked thoughts about the current duke. He should be killed as a warning to others." "Not bad." Yang Chendong smiled warmly, seemingly very satisfied with Su Yozhen's answer. "But I don't know if Lord Su has any ideas? You must know that Yu Shiriwei was able to replace the Minister of Revenue, Jin Lian, as the Minister of Justice because he has the trust of the Daizong Emperor. Without sufficient reason, it is impossible to take away his position. After Daizong Emperor took the position, there were naturally many changes in the way people worked. There were people who were disappointed and people who were favored. Yu Shiriwei was one of the people who benefited. It was impossible for him to not have the Daizong Emperor's trust. This was also the biggest obstacle for Yang Chendong to take action against him. Yes, Duke Yang is right. This Minister Yu is quite capable. It won't be easy to take action against him. Su Yozhen agreed with this view. In his heart, he even felt that Yang Chendong going against Yu Shiriwei wasn't a wise move. Of course, not being optimistic didn't mean that he would oppose it. Again, Su Yozhen's ambition wasn't small. He wasn't satisfied with the current situation. What he needed was an opportunity. If the world was peaceful, there wouldn't be any opportunities. Only in troubled times would he be able to fish in troubled waters. Although he said it wouldn't be easy, he directly said that he wanted to take action against Yu Shiriwei. It could be seen that Su Yozhen had already made up his mind. Yang Chendong, who saw all of this, immediately understood the other's thoughts. He chuckled and said, "It may not be easy to take action against him, but if you disgust him and shake his authority, it is possible for Lord Su to take half a step forward." When he heard that he could take half a step forward, Su Yozhen's eyes immediately lit up. His voice trembled as he said, "What is Duke Yang's opinion? It can't be called an opinion. It's nothing more than the truth." Yang Chendong said with a smile and pushed a stack of papers in front of Su Yozhen. "Lord Su can take a look. These are all evidence of Yu Shiriwei's corruption and perversion of the law." The thick stack of papers recorded all the mistakes Fu Shiriwei had made when he was an official. The earliest one was recorded 10 years ago. Looking at this, Su Yozhen's forehead couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Who was this Duke of Loyalty and Courage? How could he find out so many things? Yu Xiong's matter had only just happened, but he had already made sufficient preparations. It was obvious that this wasn't done in a day. It was very likely that this was prepared long ago. In other words, this Duke of Loyalty should have some understanding of each of the ministers, and should have investigated the past of all of them. Didn't that mean that some of his weaknesses were in this person's hands? At this moment, Su Yozhen suddenly felt a sense of fear towards Yang Chendong. His current achievements were all due to this person. If one day he offended him, he was afraid that he would lose everything at any time. These papers allowed Su Yozhen to see how terrifying Yang Chendong was. When he spoke, he was naturally a lot more cautious. Yes, Duke Yang. With these things, it is enough to make you Shangshu uncomfortable. But still, he was promoted not long ago and has the trust of Emperor Daizong. If you want to take action against him, I'm afraid. Without waiting for Su Yozhen to finish, Yang Chendong said, "Isn't Lord Su also deeply trusted by the emperor? Furthermore, we are only trying to sway him, not take him down. If we do well, I believe that Lord Su will have no problem becoming the left assistant minister from the Ministry of Personnel to the Ministry of Justice." Su Yozhen sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this, and his expression became much more nervous. Right now, he was the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel. Even though his official position was the same as the left assistant minister, He Wenyuan, he was still half a step behind. For example, if the current Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhi, stepped down, logically speaking, He Wenyuan would take over his position and not Su Yozhen. This was the direct difference between the right assistant minister and the right assistant minister. In other words, even though the position of the left assistant minister was still a rank 3 official, in reality, he had the possibility of taking a step forward and becoming a minister. It was no wonder that he was so excited when he heard this. Is this possible? Su Yozhen asked with a trace of uncertainty. However, his eyes were fixed on Yang Chendong, as though he was afraid that he would say the word impossible. Why is it impossible? With a smile on his face, Yang Chendong took out a piece of paper and handed it to Su Yozhen. These are some of the things that the current left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice has done. It shouldn't be difficult to take him down based on this. As for whether Lord Su will be able to get what you want, that will depend on your own methods. You should know that if I were to step in, it would only produce the opposite effect. Of course, I will not do nothing. Here are 1,000,000 taels of silver notes. You can exchange them at the Yang family's bank anytime. This can be considered as a congratulatory gift for Lord Su's promotion to the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice. A stack of silver notes was pushed in front of Su Yozhen just like that, along with 2 thick pieces of evidence. For Su Yozhen to be able to become a powerful official in history, his abilities were not to be doubted. As long as someone like him was given a chance to display his abilities, he would definitely soar to the top. With money and evidence, Su Yozhen's heart thumped. At this moment, he seemed to be able to see his future as an official. With a red face and a racing heart, he reached out and put away the items one by one. Then he cupped his hands and said to Yang Chendong, "Duke Yang, Yozhen thanks you for your help. In the future, your needs will be my needs." "Ha, Lord Su, there's no need to be so polite. We're already on the same boat. As long as I'm fine, I can guarantee Lord Su's safety and prosperity." Laughing heartily, Yang Chendong pulled Su Yozhen onto his boat. He believed that with the evidence of the 2 officials, Su Yozhen wouldn't have the courage to fall out with Yang Chendong. If he really did that, he didn't know if anything would happen to the Duke of Loyalty, but he would definitely be dead. Su Yozhen left. When he left, his steps were much bolder than when he came. Seeing that the guest had left, Tiger's Mane walked up and asked with a cautious tone, "Young master, isn't it too much to give him 1,000,000 taels?" "Not much. In the future, his usefulness will be far greater than this number," Yang Chendong said with confidence. With so many properties, the thing he didn't lack the least was money. As long as a problem could be solved with money, it naturally wouldn't be a problem. Ministry of Justice Yamen. Yu Xiong was brought here and quickly received different treatment. It wasn't like when he was locked in the brocade guard's cold iron window. Instead, he was in a clean and tidy single room, and there was food and drink available. What kind of joke was this? The grandson of his immediate superior was locked up here, so he should enjoy special treatment. Not to mention, until now, the case hadn't been determined. As soon as Yu Xiong appeared here, he was no longer in the sorry state he was in when he was caught by the brocade guard in the morning. Instead, he ate lavishly and threw all his worries to the back of his mind. His grandfather wouldn't leave him alone. After knowing this, he could rest assured. Lu San, who was caught together with him, received inhuman treatment in the prison of Ministry of Justice. He had basically been tortured by all kinds of torture. A layer of his skin had been peeled off, so he changed his statement and took the responsibility of dealing with Madame Snow alone. After Lu San changed his statement, Yu Xiong basically had nothing to do. He just needed to wait for the case to be settled, and then he could go home openly and continue to be a tyrant. Chapter 259. Yu Shiyue had changed his usual position and was now the head of the Ministry of Justice. His intention to protect his grandson was very obvious. The reason he did this was not only because he loved his grandson, but more importantly, he had heard some news from the palace. It was said that someone did not like the Duke of Loyalty and wanted to teach him a lesson. It was this news that gave Yu Shiyue confidence. He also wanted to take the opportunity to show off in front of that person that he was not afraid of the Duke of Loyalty. On the contrary, he dared to go against him. By doing this, he could make that person satisfied and think highly of him. He could also gain the reputation of not fearing power and protect his grandson's safety. By killing 3 birds with 1 stone, Yu Shiyue's determination was clearly felt by every official of the Ministry of Justice. Lu San had changed his testimony. Everything had gone smoothly. From the beginning of the matter until now, the Duke of Loyalty had not intervened or done anything. This instinctively gave Yu Shiyue a thought. The Duke of Loyalty was afraid. He was not as powerful as people said he was. At this moment, a large net was falling over Yu Shiyue's head. It was a pity that he did not know about it and was still feeling complacent about the results in front of him. In an outer courtyard not far from the palace, Su Yozhen was standing respectfully in a room as warm as spring. He seemed to be looking straight ahead, but from the corner of his eyes he would inadvertently fall on the chief eunuch, Jin Ing, who was sitting opposite him with a serious expression. Speaking of the relationship between Su Yozhen and Yang Chendong, not many people knew about it. On the contrary, based on some of their past, everyone thought that they should be enemies. Just like the initial impeachment, that was the use of swords and spears. Even the recommendation later was interpreted by others as him trying to use flattery to deal with Yang Chendong. It was only because his luck was too good that it was resolved. It was because of these past events that Su Yozhen was able to walk the path of Jin Ing and not be suspected by others. Not only that, but because he knew the way of an official and often gave gifts to Jin Ing, he had become one of his trusted aides. With this relationship, it was not difficult for Su Yozhen to see Jin Ing. What's more, when he came this time, he even brought some extremely confidential documents with him. From the moment he gave it to Jin Ing, her expression had been very solemn. Almost an hour had passed, but Jin Ying's furrowed brows showed no signs of relaxing. After about half a cup of tea's time, Jin Ing let out a long sigh and put down the manuscript. She looked up at Su Yozhen, who was standing there respectfully, and asked, "Where did these things come from?" "A merchant paid a high price for it." You also know that in this world, as long as there is money, there are few things that cannot be done. Su Yozhen's face was full of respect, and she spoke very carefully. "Merchant?" Jin Ing didn't understand at first, but then she nodded. "That's right. The Duke of Loyalty isn't completely loyal. As long as you give him enough money, it's possible to get some of his secrets. But what does he want to do with these things?" Jin Ing held the documents that recorded all the mistakes that Yu Shiyue had made since he became an official. She knew very well that if these were made public, this Minister of Justice's career would be over. How could a person with so many problems be in charge of a country's criminal justice? Wouldn't this be like saying that a thief needs to be interrogated? wouldn't he be laughed at by others? It must be because of Yu Xiong. After all, as the mastermind behind the scenes, he almost hurt the third madam of the Duke of Loyalty. With his personality, it would be strange if he didn't retaliate. Su Yozhen spoke as if she was guessing, but in reality, this guess was already a kind of reality. But even if Yu Xiong did something wrong, he shouldn't implicate the innocent. After all, Minister Yu is someone that the emperor just used. If something happens to him, it will affect the emperor's reputation. Jining said somewhat angrily. Before she could finish her sentence, Su Yozhen interrupted, "That's true. But Eunuch Jin also knows that Yu Xiong is currently in the Ministry of Justice's prison. I've heard that he's doing quite well. So why is he being treated like this? Presumably, if the root of the problem is not solved, this matter will not be solved. In other words, Minister Yu is someone that cannot be avoided." "You can't avoid him, and you can't act rashly," Jining said in an unquestionable tone. As the emperor's trusted aide and the head eunuch, Jining could not have everything she had now without the emperor's support. Thus, he would not allow anything that would damage the emperor's authority to happen. It was no wonder that he was so angry. Su Yozhen understood this very well. Fortunately, he had already discussed the countermeasures with Yang Chendong. Seeing that Jining was angry and that everything was going according to plan, Su Yozhen took half a step forward. "Eunuch Jin, you know the Duke of Loyalty's personality. He is someone who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. I'm afraid that he is only thinking about how to overthrow Minister Yu and then punish Yu Xiong. As for the consequences, I'm afraid that he won't think too much about it." How could Jining not know such a big truth? However, he still said the same thing. He would not allow anyone to challenge the emperor's authority. Thus, if such a thing was going to happen, he had to stop it. "Speak." "Presumably, since you were able to come here and spend such a high price to obtain such a thing, you must have your own way. Tell me." Jining was very angry, but there was nothing he could do. After all, Yang Chendong's existence in the imperial court was above all else. He was also the only one who might not care about the emperor's orders. Although this matter had not been confirmed, Jining did not want to try. Because once something was done, there was no possibility of going back on it. Since he did not have the ability to deal with Yang Chendong, he could only start from other places. Thus, he placed his hopes on Su Yozhen. As expected, Jining had asked him for a plan. Su Yozhen knew that the other party was going to compromise. This was also the most important part of his discussion with Yang Chendong. They were betting that Jining valued the protection of the emperor's authority. As long as the other party had this intention, the following matters would be easy to handle. On the other hand, if Jining was indecisive about protecting the emperor's authority and protecting Yu Shiyue, then it would be difficult to handle. Did he really have to announce the evidence that Yang Chendong had gathered to the public? If that was the case, he could overthrow the other party, but the effect would not be very good. In order to protect themselves, everyone would inevitably think that Yang Chendong's actions were too extreme. It was even possible that they would band together to oppose him. It was also possible that they would reject him. This would go against Yang Chendong's goal of uniting the majority of the people to peacefully develop the great Ming dynasty's political power. Thus, Yu Shiyue's matter could only be secretly resolved internally. It was not appropriate to bring it out for a public confrontation. Otherwise, it would only result in a lose-lose situation. Since Jining had asked, Su Yozhen also told him the solution according to the plan. Eunuch Jin. In fact, the Duke of Loyalty and Courage has gathered this evidence because he wants to punish the mastermind, Yu Xiong. As long as we can satisfy him, it is possible to turn this matter into a small one. Not only can we protect Minister Yu's position, but we can also bring glory to everyone. Hearing that Su Yozhen had a solution, Jin Ying's expression relaxed. "Lord Su, this eunuch is willing to listen to your wise opinion. It's like this." Su Yozhen then revealed the entire plan. "If we don't want to announce these things to the public, Minister Yu will have to make concessions. As for Yu Xiong, he will have to be sacrificed. Otherwise, the Duke of Loyalty and Courage will not give up. This matter requires Eunuch Jin to personally discuss. As long as you appear, even if Minister Yu is extremely unwilling, he will have to give in. In order to protect Minister Yu's authority, we can even find a scapegoat, such as the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice. We can push all the blame to him. We can say that he made the decision to protect Yu Xiong without Minister Yu's permission. In this way, there will be no need to worry about self-preservation. Wouldn't it be better to have a reputation for being fair and honest? As for the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, I will go to the Hu mansion to look for Lord Hu. As his father-in-law, the Duke of Loyalty and Courage will definitely give me face. Think about it. Third Madam was the one who almost got hurt. Now that the father of the legal wife has appeared, if he still doesn't give up, he will have offended the legal wife because of Third Madam. I think the wise Duke of Loyalty and Courage will know how to choose. Ji Ning nodded repeatedly. Su Yozhen's suggestion was indeed feasible. It could protect the emperor's authority and protect Yu Shiyue's high position. It could be considered an explanation to both sides. However, he was still somewhat suspicious of Hu Zhangning's appearance. Lord Su, are you sure that procurator who will speak up for us? There's nothing impossible in this world. For example, the current brocade guard is still lacking an official. If we can promote him by 1 rank, this won't be a problem. Su Yozhen chuckled sinisterly, as if everything was as clear as day. Oh, not bad, not bad. Ji Ning laughed loudly when he heard this. From the looks of it, it was only a 3rd-rank official position that could settle this matter and protect the emperor's authority. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Good. Then we'll do as Lord Su says. If this matter succeeds, then Lord Su will have done a great service. In the future, if there's a chance, this eunuch will put in a good word for you in front of the emperor. Many thanks, Eunuch Jin. Su Yozhen pretended to be very happy as he spoke. Then, with a wave of his hand, 5 banknotes from the Yang family's bank, each worth 100,000 taels, were delivered to Ji Ning. Many thanks for Eunuch Jin's promotion. This is a small token of my appreciation. A full 500,000 taels. This was no longer a simple token of appreciation. Jin Ying's expression froze at first. Then, as if he had thought of something, he laughed loudly and said, Good. Lord Su is truly an outstanding person. How about this? This eunuch has an idea of what to do. It just so happens that the Ministry of Justice is lacking a left assistant minister. However, whether or not you can be promoted will depend on your luck and the emperor's mood. Chapter 260. I'll have to trouble Eunuch Jin to help me with everything. Yozhen will remember this. Su Yozhen appeared to be overwhelmed by the favor, but her heart was already blooming with joy. He knew that if Jin Ying could directly request for a position, it meant that the matter was at least 70% complete. Acting as a middleman and paying 500,000 taels of silver to obtain the position of left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice was originally planned by Yang Qindong. It was also a part of his plan. He even had to do this. Even if he couldn't obtain the position, he still had to state his request. Otherwise, why would a person meddle in other people's business? If there were no benefits at all, his original intentions would be suspected by others. On the contrary, if he had a request, his motive would be much simpler. At the very least, no one would suspect that there was something fishy between Su Yozhen and Yang Qindong. In short, it was just one sentence to express his request. It would be best if he succeeded, but if he didn't, he would be cleared of suspicion. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? Now, it seemed that things were developing in the best direction. After the discussion, the two of them quickly began to carry out their plan. First, Jin Ying appeared in the prison of the Ministry of Justice. Then, Su Yozhen paid a visit to the Hu residence. After the attack on the 3rd Madam of the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, their actions were quickly noticed by people with ulterior motives. After all, regardless of whether it was the Yu family or the Hu family, they were in fact closely related to what happened. At this moment, anyone who came into contact with them could make other explanations and speculations. However, these were merely guesses. As for what exactly happened, no one knew. They only knew that when Jin Ying left the Ministry of Justice Yamen, Xianxia didn't personally send her off. On the contrary, when Su Yozhen left the Hu residence, Hu Zhangning escorted her all the way out. After Hu Zhangning sent Su Yozhen out, he returned to his own study. His father, Hu Xiao, was already seated and waiting. "Father." Upon seeing Hu Xiao, Hu Zhangning immediately revealed an extremely respectful expression. It was a respect that came from the bottom of his heart. "Take a seat." Seeing that his eldest son had returned to the study, Hu Xiao nodded lightly. It wasn't until his son sat down on the chair opposite him that he said in a teaching tone, "Come and analyze this matter. What exactly is going on?" "Wonderful." Hu Zhangning expressed his appreciation for Yang Chendong with words of praise. "What kind of magic?" Hu Xiao's expression did not change, but in his heart, he admired his eldest son's political awareness. Just from this sentence, he could tell that his son seemed to have seen the essence of the matter. "Father." Chen Dong took advantage of the situation and used a roundabout method to punish the audacious Yu Xiong and attack Yu Shiyue's authority at the same time. More importantly, he planted an important spy in the Ministry of Justice. This is killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Once he's done, he still has to owe him a favor. Isn't that great? Hu Zhangning said in an excited tone. In fact, there was also the matter of his promotion. That was killing 4 birds with 1 stone. However, Hu Changning was not fond of publicity, so he purposely left out one thing. Not many people knew that Su Yozhen was Yang Chendong's subordinate, but Hu Xiao and Hu Zhangning knew. They even knew that this person's impeachment and subsequent recommendation had been ordered by Yang Chendong. That was why this person had been promoted like a rocket. However, although he was the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel and seemed to hold a high position, his usefulness was very limited. This was because both the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhi, and the left assistant minister, He Wenyuan, had a good impression of Yang Chendong. In this department, there was no point in assigning more people. It was inevitable that someone would jump out. This time, he had made use of the opportunity to insert himself into the situation. The promotion of the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel to the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice meant that Yang Chendong had an important spy in the Ministry of Justice. With time, it would not be difficult for him to nurture a trusted subordinate. Very good. Ning has grown up. Your father is very gratified to see this. However, I don't know if you've thought about what he's trying to do. If he's just trying to protect himself, he could just be like Duke Ying and keep a low profile. However, his current actions have clearly exceeded the scope of an official. What is he trying to do? Hu Xiao agreed with Hu Zhangning's analysis. However, after living for so long and seeing so many things, he was still able to see the essence of the matter. That was, what was Yang Chendong trying to do? What was he trying to do? Hu Zhangning was also stunned by this question. That's right. If he was only after glory, splendor, wealth, and status, he should already have everything. Why was he still scheming? Could it be that he was only retaliating because Yu Xiong had provoked him this time? If that was the case, then he could have publicized the evidence he had given Su Yozhen to the world. That way, he would be able to vent his anger and take revenge. However, he had not done so. Instead, he had used this opportunity to allow Hu Zhangning and Su Yozhen to advance. This action was rather thought-provoking. Let's not talk about what Hu Xiao and Hu Zhangning had said behind closed doors. On the morning of the second day after Jin Ying and Su Yozhen made their move, a person had come to the entrance of the Ministry of Justice to complain. He had repeatedly accused Yu Xiong, saying that Yu Xiong had stolen his wife and forced him to leave his hometown. At the same time, he had also provided a confession. The details on the confession were very detailed. There were all the necessary witnesses and material evidence. It was an ironclad case. There were many citizens of the capital accompanying the person who had filed the complaint. There were many onlookers. In an instant, the matter had become a hot topic. Even if the Ministry of Justice wanted to suppress it, they could not do so. With this new case, the treatment of Yu Xiong, who had still been abusing his power in prison, immediately changed. He was moved from a single cell to an ordinary cell. Not only were there many prisoners there, but the smell was also very unpleasant. Faced with such an environment, Wuxiang was naturally puzzled. He shouted out his identity. "My grandfather is the Minister of Justice. How dare you treat me like this?" It would have been better if he had not said this. As soon as he said this, the prisoners in his cell looked at him with even more ferocious gazes. Some of these people had been wronged and had not been able to find an outlet to vent their anger. Wuxiang's shout was equivalent to giving them a chance to vent. How could they let go of this opportunity? They would first give him a good beating. In just 3 days, the dust had settled on Wuxiang's case. Even Yang Chendong had not expected that Wuxiang would confess many things that no one knew about when he was being tortured by the Ministry of Justice. Among them, there were 3 women who had died at his hands. Because he had done it secretly and had thrown their bodies into the river after the incident, they had sunk to the bottom of the river, so that no one knew about it. Now, the spineless Wuxiang saw that no one was shielding him. Unable to bear the punishment, he had confessed everything. Originally, he had thought that the punishment would not be heavy enough to sentence Wuxiang to death. He had even needed Lung Feng to secretly take action. But now, with these 3 lives, the newly appointed left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Su Yozhen, immediately sentenced them to death. Once this matter was out, the people of the capital all clapped and cheered. While they rejoiced at the end of the evil tyrant's life, they also sighed at Minister Yu Shiyue's impartiality and Lord Su Yozhen's righteousness in punishing evil. Wuxiang was dead. He had died on the execution ground. However, Yang Chendong had already thrown this matter to the back of his mind. In his eyes, Wuxiang was just an ant. Killing him was not enough to make him feel any pride. However, with this person's death, it was likely that other people who wanted to harm him would have to think twice before acting. They would have to think about how tough their necks were and whether they would be able to escape death after making a move. Wuxiang's matter was just a small interlude. He was the kind of person who sought his own death. Yang Chendong's current focus was on the Yang Family Academy and the construction of the Great Ming's new army. After receiving the 2 million taels of silver, Shi Heng and Jin Ying each embezzled 300,000 taels of silver. After adding in the demands of the various officials, they only had 1 million taels of silver. However, this 1 million taels of silver was enough for them to build a standing army of 150,000 people, 3 firearm battalions of 15,000 people, and an artillery battalion of 2,000 people. 1 million taels of silver was enough to accomplish these things. It was all thanks to the Ming dynasty's military household system. As the saying went, once a person entered a military household, they would be a military household for generations to come. In other words, once a person was recognized as a soldier, their sons could only be soldiers and their daughters could only marry soldiers. It was also this measure that ensured that the number of soldiers in the Great Ming Dynasty's army was always maintained at a very high level. There were articles that recorded that during the Great Ming Dynasty, the standing army in the country was always more than 1.5 million people. Among them, the military household system played an important role. Looking at the information sent to him by the Security Bureau, Yang Chendong knew that the road ahead was full of thorns. Disregarding everything else, just the large number of soldiers was not easy to deal with. They were all Han people and they were all from the same ancestor. Could he bear to kill all of them? Not to mention, he did not have the ability to do so right now. Yang Chendong wanted the Great Ming Dynasty to become the center of the world and the Great Ming Dynasty's civilization to become the ancestor of human civilization. In the future, no matter where a Han person went, they would be respected and looked up to by others. This would require the support of countless people, and they would definitely not allow a major event like internal strife to happen. However, there were some things that did not depend on one's own will. When someone hated you and wanted to kill you, it was not something that could be resolved just by giving them some benefits. After pondering for a moment, Yang Chendong gave a secret order to his most trusted subordinate, Tiger's Man. Let's do this. Find a merchant to find Yang Guang. No matter what, the position of general of the artillery battalion must be taken by him. Don't be stingy with money. This is very important for our safety. If a person wanted to accomplish great things, help others, and bring everyone to power, they had to meet one condition, and that was absolute safety. Looking at the new army of the Great Ming Dynasty, regardless of whether it was ordinary soldiers or elite firearms battalion, Yang Chendong did not care about them at all. With the large warehouse that could be entered at any time, if they provoked him, he could casually take out some new weapons and deal with them without a problem. However, the artillery battalion was annoying. Chapter 261. After all, Yang Chendong was immortal, and the Yang Manor was not an impenetrable fortress. If the artillery battalion really set their sights on him, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was the most annoying thing. Yang Chendong had come into contact with Yang Guang a few times and found that he was a man of few words. However, he was a loyal and considerate person who valued loyalty greatly. If Yang Chendong could spend some money to befriend him, he could at least warn him in advance, even though he couldn't make him disobey the orders of his superior or even the acting emperor at a critical moment. This way, he would have more time to react and an additional layer of protection for his life. Tiger's Mane nodded after receiving the order. "Young master, don't worry. I'll go to the security bureau and find a clever person to disguise himself as a wealthy businessman to support Deputy Commander Yang. But young master, our men have discovered that guard Captain Ike Shang is wantonly moving through the capital. I've heard that he's spent a large sum of money, and our men have learned that he's already heading for the sea. It seems like he's planning to return to Japan and get reinforcements. Young master, do you want us to intercept and kill him on the way or inform Commander Gao Xiong and have him take care of the problem at sea?" "No need. Let him do as he pleases. Also, inform Gao Xiong and tell him not to make things difficult for the messenger. If it's necessary, you can say some words of support, but don't take any practical actions." Speaking of this issue, Yang Chendong's face regained its indifferent smile. Because of Junko, Ikigami Yuki failed in his pursuit, and the head of the diplomatic mission, Aoki Yuki, was held accountable and imprisoned in the Ministry of Rights. Although there was no imperial order to condemn him, everyone could see that he was simply being held in a different place. Naturally, it was Yang Chendong's intervention that led to the current situation. During the new year, when he went to see his father-in-law and grandfather, he openly said that he would definitely teach Aoki Yugue a lesson and let him know that the Great Ming Dynasty was not Japan. He would not be able to do whatever he wanted. It was Yang Chendong who had expressed his stance, and Aoki Yutakai had been detained by the law enforcement officials of the Ministry of Rights. And because Yang Chendong had spent a lot of money, neither the Ministry of Justice nor the embroidered uniform guards had interfered. As a result, even though Qi Shang, the captain of the guards, had done a lot, the situation had not been alleviated or resolved. Since the matter couldn't be solved, Qi Shang made a foolish decision. He reported the matter to his country and asked his country to step forward and pressure the Great Ming Dynasty. Perhaps it was because he had been in Japan for a long time, coupled with the fact that he was a samurai, it was difficult for him to look down on other countries. In short, he had made up his mind. And this was exactly what Yang Chendong wanted to see. This was the result he wanted. Japan was one of the countries that the Great Ming Dynasty had decided not to conquer. If they wanted to deal with them, they would need an excuse. Princess Junko was a fuse. If he kept this person by his side, the rulers of Japan would definitely not tolerate it. They would be worried that the Great Ming Empire supported the Japanese royal family. In order to solve this problem, Junko had to die. If he wanted to kill this person, he had to go to the capital of the Great Ming Empire to stir up trouble. At that time, Yang Chendong would make the situation worse. Once the matter reached a certain extent, under the pressure, it would be impossible for Dai Zong not to want to conquer Japan. In this way, he would have a righteous reason. In the end, this was Yang Chendong's plan. But at the same time, it was also a helpless move. Japan was an island country, and its coastline was so long that even Yang Shi's navy couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't completely block it, so they might as well not block it. Let them take the initiative to cause trouble, and then fight back openly. Tiger's Mane didn't quite understand Yang Chendong's words. But out of absolute trust in the young master, he nodded happily. "Okay, young master, I will give the order to Commander Gao Xiong in your name." Soon after the new year, the snow and ice in the capital began to melt. After the spring breeze, everything began to recover, and the land began to see green again. The weather became warmer and warmer, and the people in the capital began to take off their winter clothes. They changed out of their bulky cotton robes and walked on the streets. The endless stream of people indicated the prosperity of the great Ming Empire. As the mercenaries and the Walla established trade at the border, all kinds of novel things appeared, which opened the eyes of the people of the Walla. While they enjoyed life, they put down their sharp weapons, and it was a scene of harmony. When the border was stabilized, the situation in the capital would naturally be stable. The merchants were busy making money, and the farmers were busy with the New Year's spring plowing. Especially with the appearance of the hydraulic wells, they saw the hope of a bumper harvest. The officials were also busy with their own government affairs. Those who wanted to be promoted were thinking of ways to get promoted. Those who wanted to make money were thinking of ways to make money. Even the emperor of the great Ming dynasty, Zhu Qiu, was busy training the army and managing the country's affairs. Some officials who had similar ideas to him were promoted. Some stubborn officials were either left idle or demoted. The power was slowly gathering in his hands. Yang Chendong observed all these changes as if he was an outsider. Other than reading the intelligence sent by the Security Bureau every day, he spent most of his time teaching the students of the Yang Family Academy. After nearly 2 months, more than 60 people were eliminated from the original 101 people, and only 2/5 of them were left. Among the people who left, some of them couldn't keep up. Originally, they wanted to use the name of the Duke of Loyalty and the East Marshal to fish in troubled waters and make a name for themselves. Then, with the title of this person's student, it could be imagined that it would be much easier to mingle in the officialdom. There were also some people who really had the idea of learning. After all, the person who could make such a majestic poem like Snow of the Yang Family Village must have great strength. But when they really learned it, they knew that he taught more about numbers, physics, chemistry, and science. And in the big environment where only Confucianism was respected, these were nothing more than heterodox methods, and it was difficult to be recognized by the orthodox. Since they couldn't be recognized, they simply stopped learning. The third part of the people who left were those who didn't have enough IQ or couldn't bear the hardships. This was because the Yang Family Academy required students to run every day and stand in military posture. Under this semi-militarized management, some of the young people who only knew how to study were unable to bear it. In the end, because they made too many mistakes, their military posture was taken away and they had to leave. Most of them left, and 2/5 of them were the elites among them. Among them, Yang Chendong did find a lot of good seedlings. While he carefully observed, he also guided them according to their individual advantages, making the learning atmosphere of the people who stayed very high. It was worth mentioning that Junko actually relied on her own ability to persist until now. Originally, Yang Chendong accepted Junko as a student because he wanted to put her in his sight. After all, he still needed her in the future, so he casually accepted her. When he made this decision, he was also prepared to let her go and force her to stay if she couldn't hold on at any time. But unexpectedly, although Junko was young, her body was full of tenacity, and she was one of the best in all kinds of assessments and studies. Not only did she not rely on Yang Chendong to stay, but she also became a goddess in the eyes of many men. More than half of the male students secretly liked her, including Wang Si, the grandson of the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Wang Ji. Junko's fluent Mandarin, coupled with her beautiful face and lively personality, made Wang Si unable to extricate himself. Junko clearly knew all of this, but she didn't point it out. She didn't agree or disagree, but instead kept a distance from the people who liked her. Today, she took the initiative to say a few words to you, but tomorrow or the day after, she might ignore you for a few days. This kind of performance had once caused many male students to be unable to study normally. Humph! This is their innate charm. After hearing Tiger's Mane's report, and thinking of the things they produced in the future, and the Aoi people who were often mentioned by Chinese men, this Junko was obviously their ancestor. It wasn't a crime for a person to be beautiful, but if they wanted to use this power to stir up trouble in his territory, Yang Chendong couldn't tolerate them. Tiger's Mane, spread the news that Junko is a girl from Japan. No matter who marries her in the future, he will have to follow her to Japan and become her son-in-law. Even the children born in the future will have to follow her family name. Yang Chendong winked at Tiger's Mane, revealing a deep meaning in his eyes. Tiger's Mane immediately understood and immediately said, "Young master, don't worry, I will do it right away." Tiger's Mane complied, and only an hour later, Junko appeared outside Yang Chendong's study with a beautiful face. With a wronged expression on her face, Junko didn't dare to take a step forward. These days, she more or less understood this Dong Shuai in people's eyes. This person seemed to be very kind, but he had a sense of propriety and bottom line when doing things. For example, this study was not a place she could enter and leave at will. She remembered that once, she inadvertently wanted to take advantage of Yang Chendong's absence to take a look, but when she came to the door, a sharp knife was placed on her throat. Junko didn't even know when the other person appeared, but she felt a boundless killing intent. Under this kind of killing intent, she was afraid. Junko had a feeling that if she really dared to take a step forward, she was afraid that her head would be separated from her body, and she would die. After that incident, Junko became a lot more well-behaved. She also had a clearer understanding that Dong Shuai, who always had a smile on his face, was not only the idol of many women, but also a demon who killed without batting an eyelid. Chapter 262. Logically speaking, after knowing that he was a devil, the most important thing to do was to leave. Captain Kobayashi had told her more than once that he didn't find anyone watching her, but for some reason, Junko didn't want to leave. Whenever she was about to make the decision to leave, Yang Chendong's smiling face would often appear in her mind, and that smile would make her linger back and forth. So she always found various reasons to persuade Kobayashi and herself to stay in the Yang family manor and the Yang family academy day after day. Staying in the Yang family academy was the happiest time of Junko's life. Here, she not only enjoyed equal treatment with everyone, but also didn't have to pay attention to any rules when interacting with people. On the contrary, she could also learn some new knowledge that she had never heard of before, or even thought of before. Slowly, Junko became deeply immersed in it, and she also found that the students who were able to stay in the academy were very smart and could endure hardships. These advantages were exactly what her father, who was in the royal family of Japan, wanted. So she gave birth to other thoughts, which was to take these people for her own use. If there was a chance, after these people finished their studies, she could deceive them to go to Japan. She believed that it would play a positive role in her father's efforts to stabilize the throne. In order to achieve this unspeakable goal, Junko deliberately used her charm jutsu, intentionally or unintentionally making contact with the male students. She had been formally trained since childhood on how to please a man. Soon, Junko achieved her goal, making more than one student fall head over heels for her and express their willingness to submit to her. She thought that if she continued to do this, when she graduated from the academy, she could leave with these people. But an unexpected disaster happened, and her identity as a Japanese was suddenly exposed. Not only that, but it was also said that the man she was going to marry was likely to eventually go to Japan by marrying into her family. As soon as this matter came out, the expressions of those male students who admired her instantly changed. At that time, the difference between the status of men and women was very obvious. It was very common for men to be the head of the family and women to be the head of the family. Things like marrying into the family was absolutely disgraceful. As for the students who were able to stay until now, which one of them wasn't smart and proud? How could they do such a disgraceful thing? At that moment, the male students who liked to listen to Junko's words quickly began to keep their distance from her. Some of them even avoided her as if she was a scourge. This made Junko's efforts go down the drain. She was so angry that she wanted to look for Yang Chendong to be the judge. She had a feeling that the person who could do such a thing must be Dong Shuai. Outside the study, Junko stood there with a stubborn and wronged look on her face. No one knew if she was really good at acting or if she was really showing her true feelings. In short, her tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes, indicating that she was one of the victims. A young girl, a beautiful young girl, a young girl with a face that could topple cities. At this moment, her appearance was like a pear blossom in the rain. It was likely that any man who saw her would feel pity for her and would not be able to help but go forward to comfort her. But at the door of the study, for a long time, no one appeared. It was as if this place was really empty. But only Junko knew in her heart that there must be more than one pair of eyes staring at her in the dark. This feeling was very strong, but it also made her heart full of helplessness. When a person's proudest side couldn't occupy the slightest advantage, it must be the time of despair. Her tears flowed freely. It gave people the feeling that the sentence, "women are made of water," was really true. Junko stood there for half an hour, but her tears didn't dry up. Finally, Yang Chendong's unique magnetic voice sounded in the study. "Come in." Finally getting permission, Junko felt relieved. Her anger was not in vain. While she breathed a deep sigh of relief, she secretly brewed enough tears. Then she stepped on the 3-inch golden lotus and slowly walked into the study. She made sufficient preparations and even thought about how she should behave when she met Yang Chendong. For example, what she should do when Yang Chendong looked at her, or how she should display her advantage when he looked at her with a pained expression on his face. She should make the best use of it. And what she should do when he didn't look at her. Junko, who was fully prepared, was even confident that after seeing Yang Chendong, he would take pity on her, and then what she should ask for as the dominant position and so on. However, all her preparations were ruined by Yang Chendong's seemingly casual words after entering the study. "Do you know Kimura Yoshida? Do you know him?" "Kimura-kun." As soon as she heard this name, Junko's body trembled, and then she threw all her previous preparations to the back of her mind. She knew this name too well. Kimura Yoshida, the backbone of the Kimura family, and one of the lackeys who supported General Ashikaga Yoshimasa the most. This person was not only cruel and merciless, but he was also a war maniac. In his eyes, the world should belong to Japan, and not a place made up of islands. When she was in the palace, she had heard her father say more than once that some of the backbone of the imperial family had died at the hands of Kimura Yoshida. This was a person who caused her father to have a headache and hatred. How could she not know? So when she heard this name, she couldn't help but tremble and lose her composure. After being stunned for 7 or 8 breaths, she suddenly noticed that Yang Chendong didn't raise his head. Instead, he was looking down at something. Fortunately, no one saw her lose her composure. While rejoicing in her heart, Junko said with a very innocent look, "Of course I've heard of him. In Japan, the Kimura family's power and influence are also very big. By the way, why did the East Marshal mention his name?" Even though he had been lowering his head all this while, he had already sensed that there was something different about Junko. Since she still wanted to continue pretending, he might as well give her a strong dose of medicine. "Oh, it's nothing, it's just that this person came to the Great Ming Dynasty and made a strict protest on behalf of Japan to the Great Ming Dynasty. He asked us to release Aoki Yuki, and also asked us to apologize and compensate them. By the way, he also said that if he was not satisfied, Japan will regard this as a provocation to them. At that time, it is very likely that Japan's army will appear in the Great Ming Dynasty's territory, and we will be responsible for it." As if he was talking about a fact, Yang Chendong's words didn't have the slightest emotion. But these words in Junko's ears made her feel shocked. What does this Kimura Yoshida want to do? Does he want to provoke a war between the two countries? Doesn't he know that compared to the current Great Ming Dynasty, Japan's strength is too far? Doing this is simply throwing an egg at a rock, and more importantly, it will put herself in danger. Imagine, if Japan really dares to go to war with the Great Ming Dynasty, as the princess of the Japanese imperial family, it is obvious what the result will be. She was shocked by Kimura Yoshida's viciousness. Since the other party came, it is impossible for him not to know that she is in the Great Ming Dynasty, but he still did this. It is clear that he doesn't want to let her live well, and even wants to kill her. While Junko was still imagining various possibilities in her heart, Yang Chendong continued to say, "Hey, you are also a Japanese, you should know the gap between you and the Great Ming Dynasty. Kimura Yoshida's approach is simply courting death. If it weren't for the fact that the Great Ming Dynasty is forbidden by the sea, I really want to take the army to visit. No. Don't, we Japanese are still very peace-loving. As soon as she heard Yang Chendong say that he will bring the army to Japan, and thinking of the various legends of this person defeating the Walla, Junko didn't know why, but she felt a sense of fear. When he heard Junko say that the Japanese are peace-loving, Yang Chendong had a feeling of wanting to laugh in his heart. Looking at the history, once the Japanese became strong, which time didn't they take the initiative to start a war? But now, the princess of the imperial family actually said that they are peace-loving. What a ridiculous statement. But at the same time, it also proved that the current Japan is not strong enough. At least compared to the Great Ming Dynasty, it is still a lot worse. While laughing in his heart, Yang Chendong was calm on the surface. Oh, Miss Junko is a peace-loving person. This is very good. It is a pity that you are only born in a merchant family. You can't represent Japan. After pointing out that Junko's identity is too ordinary, her words naturally can't be trusted. Junko's face changed greatly. At this time, she suddenly wanted to confess her identity, but this thought just flashed through her mind, because she knew that if Japan really did something bad to the Great Ming Dynasty, once her identity was exposed, it would be extremely dangerous, and she might even be immediately arrested by the Great Ming Dynasty's army. Her identity can't be exposed. For Yang Chendong's words, Junko can't refute. She can only stand there and ask with a cautious attitude, I don't know what your emperor and ministers think about Kimura Yoshida's proposal? Normally, it was a bit inappropriate for Junko to ask such a question. Yang Chendong didn't have to say it to her, but this was originally part of the plan, so Dong Shuai showed that he didn't object and said, on this issue, the emperor and the minister's views are not unified. Some people are really frightened by Kimura Yoshida's words. You also know that the Great Ming Dynasty's territory is vast, and the coastline near the sea is extremely long, so it is impossible to be vigilant everywhere. If Japan really attacks in places where we are not prepared, it will be a real headache, so some ministers propose to release the former head of the envoy, Aoki Yuki, and hand you over. Chapter 263. You're going to hand me over? Junko was surprised. That's right. Back then, those assassins came for you. I just happened to pass by. If we want to compromise, of course, we will hand you over to the Japanese. Sigh, I was wondering how you offended them. It looks like they won't give up until they catch you. Yang Chendong asked curiously. He didn't mention that Junko was the princess of Japan. He wanted to see how long she could hide it. When she heard Yang Chendong say that the Great Ming was not only prepared to compromise, but also wanted to hand her over, Junko's face turned pale. No, they hate my family. Once they catch me, they will kill me. As she spoke, Junko had already walked to Yang Chendong's side. She reached out and grabbed his arm. Her eyes were filled with a pitiful look. Don't, I will faint if you continue like this. The two of them were very close to each other. Yang Chendong could already smell the fragrance of Junko's body. He enjoyed the feeling very much, but he still said, you don't have to be too anxious. What I'm saying is just the opinion of some of the ministers. Some of them think that we shouldn't compromise with Japan. If they want to cause trouble for us, we'll open up the Forbidden Sea and send an army to Japan. We'll teach them a lesson and let them know who they can't afford to provoke. When Yang Chendong said her father's name, Junko's face changed. No, the emperor will not make trouble for the Great Ming. There must be some villains behind this. You must investigate this thoroughly. How do you know that the emperor won't make trouble for the Great Ming? You are not a member of the imperial family. Yang Chendong asked with a surprised expression. When Junko heard these words, she couldn't help but open her mouth to defend herself. However, just as she opened her mouth, she quickly closed it again. Yes, it's just my guess. When I was in the country, I heard from my father that the emperor is an emperor who doesn't like war. I don't think he will take the initiative to start a war with the Great Ming. Oh? So it was just hearsay? Unfortunately, it seems that what you heard is not true. Kimura Yoshida has already arrived, and he has already expressed the intentions of your emperor. The way I see it, this war might start soon. Yang Chendong shook his head and expressed his opinion. Junko was very anxious at this moment, and she was cursing Yang Chendong's stupidity in her heart. The outside world said that Dong Shuai was smart, but now it seemed that he was just SOSO. He actually mistakenly thought that the Emperor of Japan wanted to go to war with the great Ming dynasty. What a stupid idea. At this time, Junko really wanted to open Yang Chendong's head and see what he was thinking. Once again, the thought of exposing her identity popped up in Junko's mind. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything in the end. She didn't know what would happen if she revealed her true identity. She didn't dare to take the risk. On the contrary, she believed in herself more. She decided to leave Yang village immediately and find a way to go back to Japan to see her father. Kimura Yoshida's coming to the great Ming dynasty was simply a conspiracy to overthrow the royal family. General Ashikaga Yoshimasa clearly wanted to use war to mobilize the emotions of the entire country. Only in times of war could a general have more power and do many things that he couldn't do in normal times. Junko originally wanted to ask who revealed that she was Japanese, but because of the appearance of Kimura Yoshida, she was no longer in the mood to care about these trivial matters. After leaving Yang Chendong's study somewhat absent-mindedly, she went to Captain Xiao Lin's room. When he saw the princess take the initiative to appear, Kobayashi was naturally very happy, but when he saw Gong Yan's face as if she had been bullied, he couldn't help but say angrily, "Princess, who bullied you? Tell Kobayashi, I will teach him a lesson." Both of them spoke in Japanese, so they weren't afraid of being eavesdropped. Only at this time could Junko be completely relaxed. "Kobayashi, don't be agitated. No one bullied me. I just got the news that Kimura Yoshida is here." Junko then told Kobayashi the news she got from Yang Chendong in detail. When he heard that Kimura Yoshida was here and threatened the great Ming dynasty, Kobayashi immediately said angrily, "Princess, don't be afraid. I will personally kill this person tonight. As long as he is dead, all the problems will be solved." Junko shook her head decisively after hearing that. She didn't believe that Kobayashi could kill Kimura Yoshida with his strength. Since he was here, security was naturally the most important thing. Even if the emperor of the great Ming dynasty didn't have a definite result, he would send a large number of troops to protect him. Kobayashi alone couldn't do it. Junko's mind was still clear, and she had a clear understanding of the situation in front of her. It was precisely because of this that she didn't agree to Kobayashi's request. Instead, she said, "Kobayashi, you can't do it. It's too risky. This princess has decided that you will protect me and leave here. Then we will find a boat to leave the great Ming dynasty and return to Japan. I will tell everything to my father. Then he will have a way to solve the current situation." Junko said firmly. She decided to leave Yang village and the great Ming dynasty, not because she was afraid of death, but because she didn't want to see Kimura Yoshida's conspiracy succeed. She needed to tell her father about it. She couldn't let him be kept in the dark. In the study, Tiger's Mane quietly entered and came to Yang Chendong. He whispered, "Young master, Miss Junko went to find Kobayashi and now she has returned to her room. Our people have noticed that Kobayashi has gone to bed. It's daytime now and he's already sleeping. It seems that he wants to take action at night. What do you think?" Yang Chendong smiled. This Junko was a decisive person. It was a pity that she was a girl. If she was a boy, the future of Japan would be in her hands. Yang Chendong guessed that there would be a lot of changes. "Young master, don't worry. She can't run away." Tiger's Mane patted his chest and promised. He had to stay in Yang village every day. Although there were a lot of things to do, he rarely had the opportunity to do it. Now that there was finally someone who wanted to test his sword, how could he not be excited? Jingqing, Ministry of Rites Yamen. Kimura Yoshida, who was not tall and had a standard Japanese beard, walked out of the Ministry of Rites Yamen accompanied by Ikegami. As he walked, he grumbled. It could be seen that he was very angry at this moment. "Kimura-kun, please calm down. The Ministry of Rites' attitude has always been bad. All of this is related to the Duke of Loyalty." Ikegami saw the murderous look on Kimura's face. He was afraid that he would be implicated, so he quickly targeted Yang Chendong. Baka, who the hell is that Duke of Loyalty? How dare he be the enemy of Japan? Does he want to die? And Ikegami, you really disappoint me. The country spent so much effort to cultivate you. Why can't you deal with a Han? Kimura Yoshida was indeed full of anger, and this time he vented all his anger on Qisheng. Ikegami quickly bowed his head and admitted his mistake. The concept of hierarchy in Japan was very strict. As a subordinate, he must unconditionally obey the orders of the superior. Even if he knew that it was wrong, he had to carry it out. Obviously, the great Ming dynasty system was far inferior to Japan's. Seeing that Ikegami's attitude was good, Kimura Yoshida's face was not as serious as before. Let me ask you, is the princess still in Yang village? Yes, we have been watching outside, but we didn't see her come out. Ikegami nodded his head vigorously again and replied. Very good, tonight, we will catch the princess and massacre the Yang village. Kimura Yoshida's face showed a ruthless expression. When he thought of the beautiful and young face of the princess, his whole body couldn't help but tremble. It was a precursor of excitement. Kimura-kun, please reconsider. When Ikegami heard that Kimura Yoshida was going to attack the Yang village, for some reason, Ikegami thought of the omnipresent mysterious gun that night. That was the first time he felt fear since he became a samurai. In fact, in his mind, there was nothing that could stop that advanced firearm at the moment. Seeing Ikegami's expression, Kimura Yoshida said with a look of disappointment, "What's wrong? Are you afraid? Ikegami, what you have done is a disgrace to the samurai of Japan." Ikegami, who was reprimanded, thought of the honor that a samurai should have. With a firm expression he said, "Hey, Ikegami is wrong. Please give me a chance, I will do my best tonight." "No need." Kimura Yoshida waved his hand and said arrogantly, "This time, I brought 3 jonin, 10 chunin, and 30 genin from Japan. Tonight, I will let them do the job. As for you, you should reflect on whether you can still be called a real samurai." Kimura Yoshida was arrogant, and his methods were cruel. It was also true that he regarded human lives as nothing. However, it didn't mean that he was stupid. On the contrary, he had the confidence to say such words. The source of his confidence was the 43 ninjas that the Kimura family sent to him. The number of ninjas in the entire Kimura family was no more than 200. This time, they used a quarter of their strength to prove Kimura Yoshida's position in the family, and also proved that he was determined to accomplish his mission. Ikegami originally wanted to object and proposed that he take the initiative to lead the team. However, when he heard that there were 43 ninjas, and 3 of them were jonin, he was relieved. This force was more than enough to deal with an army of 500 people, let alone a small village. Even if those firearms are powerful, in the face of a ninja who appears and disappears like a ghost, they can only passively be beaten and wait for death. Chapter 264. At the back door of the courtyard where the Japanese diplomatic mission was staying, the waiter who came to deliver their meals as usual was suddenly asked to serve more than a dozen jars of high-concentration wine. This sudden situation was quickly sent to the secret agents of the Security Bureau, who then sent it to Director Yang San. Then, it was sent to the most confidential study in the inner courtyard of the Yang Manor. More than a dozen jugs of high-concentration wine. Hearing this sudden news, Yang Chendong fell into deep thought. In his previous life, he had fought with a lot of Japanese intelligence personnel, including some high-level ninjas. At that time, he naturally saw a lot of information about them, and one of them was that as a real ninja, they needed a lot of high-concentration wine before making a move. First, it was used to boost their courage before killing, and second, it was used to clean the ninja sword. In the eyes of a real ninja, the ninja sword was like a second life, and was extremely sacred. Before using the sword, it was necessary to wipe it clean. This was originally a custom, and also a kind of respect. If it was just ordinary wine, even if the amount was a little bit more, it wouldn't be a problem, because there were many explanations, and it didn't necessarily mean that they wanted to do something. But to ask for so much high-concentration wine, It was almost beyond the limit of human drinking. Under such circumstances, Yang Chendong couldn't help but think about it. In his mind, some of the history of ninjas came to mind. It seems that at this time, ninjas were very popular in Japan, and even many big families would train and cultivate ninjas from childhood. Such ninjas were loyal enough, and there was no need to worry about betrayal. So, is it possible that the Kimura family also sent ninjas? It has to be said that Yang Chendong's mind was really smart, and just from this small matter, he thought of a lot of possibilities. Tiger's mane, don't make a move on Junko and Kobayashi, let them go, we just need to follow from a distance, I think it may be very lively tonight. Yes, young master. When Tiger's mane heard the word, lively, the blood in his body spurted out, and he was afraid that if he didn't make a move for a long time, his bones would slowly solidify. Tiger's mane went to make the arrangements. According to the young master's instructions, they couldn't bring too many people, but they had to be elite. As soon as he left, Yang Chendong turned and walked into the inner room of the study. Usually, without his permission, even Hu Yen and Tiger's mane were not allowed to enter. It could be said that this was his absolute private territory. As soon as Yang Chendong entered, he turned around and disappeared, entering the large warehouse. Don't fight a battle you have no confidence in. It was often easy for big shots to fail in small gutters. In order to prevent such a thing from happening to himself, Yang Chendong would not have any thoughts of underestimating the enemy. Since he suspects that the other side may have ninjas, he has to make some preparations in advance just in case. Compared to the ninjas who have been treated as death warriors since childhood, his life is really different. Junko knew nothing about the measures Kimura Yoshida might take. She only knew that this person appeared in the capital of the Great Ming Dynasty, and she was no longer safe here. She didn't even tell Yang Chendong that the Kimura family raised ninjas, because she was afraid that the more she said, the more flaws she would leave, and eventually lead to the suspicion of the other side. After all, Yang Chendong was too tall in her heart, and too smart, even to the point of almost reaching the point of omnipotence. In the face of such a person, she had to be careful every time she said a word. After a seemingly long wait, it finally came to night. When the sky was completely dark, the people of the Yang village and the academy had dinner and entered the sleep mode. Kobayashi appeared in Junko's room like a ghost. Kobayashi, you are here. Did anyone notice you? Seeing Kobayashi suddenly appear in her room, Junko was surprised at first, and then asked with concern. Your Highness, don't worry, no one noticed me. I have been here for so long, and they no longer pay attention to me. Also, I have found a way to leave the village. There is a loophole when they change the defense. As long as we seize the right time, we can leave without anyone noticing. Kobayashi said confidently. But what he didn't know was that the so-called loophole was left by Yang Chendong early in the morning. He knew that no defense could be 100% safe, so he deliberately left an obvious loophole. Instead of letting the opponent deliberately find the loophole, it was better to directly give him a ready-made one, so that the opponent would not have other ideas. Although Junko was smart, she knew too little about these military matters, so she chose to completely trust Kobayashi. Well, Kobayashi, then let's leave. Yes, Your Highness, please follow me. In a while, in order to increase our speed, Kobayashi may have to do something outside the rules. When saying these words, Kobayashi's face instinctively turned red. The so-called violation of the rules naturally referred to some necessary physical contact between the two of them. In order to leave here, Junko didn't care so much and immediately nodded. Well, I will listen to Kobayashi's arrangement. After the agreement, the two people appeared in the dark like two leopard cats, and then passed through several courtyards. Sometimes, Kobayashi reached out and held Junko's slender waist and ran quickly with her. In this way, after about a quarter of an hour, the two people walked out of the outer courtyard of the Xianxia village and came to the outside desolate land. At this time, it was spring, although there were some grass, it was not very tall, and was not enough to cover their bodies, especially at night, when the wind blew, it made Junko shiver. Princess, are you okay? When Kobayashi saw Junko's body shiver, he instinctively asked with concern. I'm fine, let's leave here quickly. Junko clenched her teeth and shook her head. She only had one thought in her mind, and that was to inform Father Emperor about Kimura Yoshida's appearance in the Great Ming Dynasty, and for this purpose, it was just a little cold. What was it? In this way, the two shadows, one in front and one behind, went farther and farther away from the Xianxia village, and slowly disappeared in the open wilderness. In order to take care of Junko, Kobayashi's speed was not very fast. The two people, one in front and one behind, used half an hour to walk 10 miles, but even so, Junko's legs were already as heavy as iron lead. This was because she was running with the students in the academy, and if there was no real training, she was afraid that she would not be able to persist until now. Princess, do we need to take a rest? Looking at Junko's painful face, Kobayashi asked nervously. It's okay, I can still persist. Although cold and tired all over her body, the stubborn Junko still refused Kobayashi's kindness. But just as she said this, suddenly a big hand covered her small cherry mouth, and she was caught off guard and was firmly pressed. After feeling that her mouth was tightly blocked, Junko's eyes showed extreme panic. Looking carefully, she found that the person who pressed her mouth was actually Kobayashi, and her eyes showed disbelief. She did not expect that her most trusted guard captain would dare to have any bad thoughts about her. Shoo! His right hand covered Junko's mouth, and his left index finger stretched out, and after making a shushing gesture, Kobayashi's ears perked up to listen for something. It was just that Junko did not see the situation in front of her, because she was too beautiful. She knew that this was both a strength and a weakness. The strength was that when she did something, she could do twice the result with half the effort, and it was easy to attract the favor of others. The weakness was that her appearance was given by heaven, and it was easy to attract the bad thoughts of others, so she had to be on guard. But she never thought that her most trusted Kobayashi would have such bad thoughts about her. The moment her mouth was covered, she completely lost her judgment, and the only thing left was her constant struggle and resistance. At this time, Kobayashi was concentrating on the very light footsteps he heard just now, and he did not notice Junko's fierce resistance at all. In a moment of carelessness, his right hand was bitten, making him instinctively release his hand, and then Junko's beautiful voice sounded. Kobayashi, what are you doing? Baka, there are people here. Along with Junko's voice, soon a shout in Japanese came from the front, and then dozens of black shadows surrounded them like a fan. Not good, it's an assassin. The pain made Kobayashi shake his right hand, and then the dangerous situation in front of him made him grab Junko's hand and turn around to escape. At this moment, Junko also saw the shadow in the distance with the help of the faint moonlight. She finally knew that Kobayashi didn't have any bad intentions just now, but had discovered something. She immediately regretted it, and her feet naturally turned around and ran quickly under Kobayashi's tug. Kobayashi's sixth senses were very sharp, and he was able to discover the existence of danger in time, and his reaction was also very fast. But unfortunately, Princess Junko was relying on him, and after running a few steps, the assassin behind him caught up with him. When Kobayashi heard the sound of a sharp blade cutting through the air behind him, he promptly turned around and slashed forward with the katana in his hand. In the dark and silent night, a spark was ignited because of this action. It was a sound that could only be produced when sharp blades collided with each other rapidly. Under the spark, Kobayashi's feet involuntarily took a step back, and the katana was held horizontally in front of him, and his face was incomparably dignified. Although the katana just now repelled a ninja who was chasing after him, it also hindered his retreat speed. In just a short time, at least 4 ninjas surrounded him in front and behind. That is to say, he and Princess Junko have been surrounded at this moment. Junko stood nervously behind Kobayashi, looking around with a panicked expression, and even she could feel the endless murderous intent from the looming black shadows. Chapter 265. Kobayashi, are we unable to escape? Junko's voice was filled with despair. Princess, don't worry. As long as Kobayashi is alive, I will never let anyone hurt you. Kobayashi didn't answer the question directly, but said with determination. Well, Maybe this is the will of God. Kobayashi, you don't have to worry about me. If possible, just kill your way out and tell my father the news. Junko's voice suddenly had a hint of indifference and relief. Ever since she was born, all she saw was her father sighing. From then on, she swore to herself that she would grow up quickly and help her father. After so many years, she had been working hard for this goal. But in the end, she was still a woman. Although she was beautiful, she didn't have any effect on the overall situation. Now, she was finally going to die. Perhaps this was the best explanation she could give to her father. A sharp dagger suddenly appeared in Junko's right hand. This was her self-defense weapon, but at the critical moment, it was also a suicide weapon. Even if she died, she wanted to die cleanly. She couldn't let other men sully her body. Princess, don't. Seeing Junko even took out a dagger, Kobayashi's face showed a strong struggle. Kobayashi, don't say any more. Even if I die, I won't let others have me. You don't have to worry about me. Just rush out. That way I can die in peace. Junko seemed to want to let Kobayashi rest assured. She decided to end her life in advance. While speaking, the dagger was already moving towards her neck. The dagger was a gift from the Japanese imperial family. It was one of the tributes sent by others. Naturally, there was no problem with its sharpness. As long as she moved it towards her neck, everything would be over. At this moment, there was a trace of a smile on Junko's face. She seemed to have seen the beautiful door of heaven open, and the angel was waving to her. Bang! Just as the dagger was about to reach his neck, when the distance was less than 10 centimeters, a crisp gunshot rang out. It was so crisp and ear-splitting in this silent night. After the gunshot, the dagger was directly hit. The powerful impact directly shook Junko's right hand, and the dagger naturally fell to the ground. You are my people. This young master didn't agree, so you can't die. Along with the gunshot, a masculine voice sounded. And from the direction of the voice, a group of mercenaries holding torches appeared behind Junko and Kobayashi. It's the East Commander. Upon hearing this voice and seeing this scene, Kobayashi couldn't help but exclaim. In the past, he hated Yang Chendong very much, because this person had stolen the heart of his goddess. If it wasn't for his lack of strength, he would have assassinated Yang Chendong long ago. But now, his thoughts were completely different. At this moment, Yang Chendong's appearance was undoubtedly a savior who could save his goddess from the hands of death. Even Kobayashi was so excited, let alone Junko. The dagger fell to the ground, and her palm was bleeding. All of this could no longer attract Junko's attention. There was only one sentence in her mind. You are my people. This young master didn't agree, so you can't die. What does he mean? What does he mean by I am his people? Isn't he worried about my identity as a Japanese? The other men of the great Ming dynasty avoided her. Does he dare to face the difficulties head-on? What is he thinking? During the day, her identity was made public, and Junko's image and status in the Yang family academy fell by 1,000 miles. Those men of the great Ming dynasty who used to pursue her all expressed that they were thousands of miles away from her, which made Junko very sad. It also made her understand that with her identity, she could only marry the great Ming dynasty's royal family as a concubine and become a dispensable vase. But it was absolutely impossible for her to live with a man of the great Ming dynasty. Not for anything else, but because she was a Japanese. At that time, under the relatively backward and feudal thinking, no man of the great Ming dynasty would dare to marry her. It was because she couldn't see any hope and knew that Kimura Yoshida was coming that she made the decision to leave the Yang family village. Although she was very happy living here, she would never belong here. But when she was disheartened, Yang Chendong said that she was his people, which made her originally dead heart burn again, as if she saw a new hope. At this moment, Junko's heart was in a mess. At this moment of life and death, she was stunned, as if she didn't know that she was on the verge of death. A gunshot broke the silence of the night and made the ninjas on the opposite side vigilant. Rush over and kill them. One of the 3 high-level ninjas suddenly shouted in Japanese, and then dozens of black shadows quickly approached, rushing straight toward Yang Chendong and the others. Shoot at will. Tiger's Mane, who was leading the team, saw the black shadows quickly approaching and decisively gave the order to attack. Following this voice, the sound of gunfire could be heard, drawing out a bright meteor as it rushed forward. "Kobayashi, protect Miss Junko." Yang Chendong also shouted, and the pistol in his right hand shot a bright bullet forward. Kobayashi was shouted and immediately threw Junko to the ground, so that she wouldn't be disturbed by the stray bullets. As he fell to the ground, he looked up and saw the ninjas in black getting hit by bullets one after another. Blood splattered everywhere as they fell to the ground and died. This was the first time that Kobayashi saw the power of advanced firearms at such a close distance. When he saw that the ninjas, who were known as ghosts and ghosts, were so vulnerable, there was only panic and shock in his eyes. He suddenly felt that all the martial arts he had painstakingly learned in the past were useless. In the face of such an advanced and accurate firearm, it seemed that no matter how strong one's martial arts were, it would be useless. "Baka! Rush over and kill them in close combat." Seeing that a ninja was hit by a gun and fell to the ground and lost his life, the leading ninja's voice was filled with monstrous anger. While giving the order loudly, he also moved quickly, and at the same time his right hand was constantly throwing ninja dart, which was used for long-range attacks. The ninja dart broke through the air and flew forward. Yang Chendong, who was standing in the middle of the team, had a trace of indifference in his eyes, and shouted, "All of you, throw away your torches, and be on your guard." The ninja dart's power at close range was not inferior to firearms. This was something that Yang Chendong had experienced as early as in his last life. It's just that at that time, ninjas were almost extinct, and there were very few people who could use ninja dart. But now, when he returned to the Great Ming Dynasty, he actually saw such a thing again, which really gave him a headache. When modern firearms face cold weapons, the advantage is naturally very obvious. But it can't be said that there are no disadvantages. For example, in close combat, the effect of firearms becomes very poor, and in order to prevent self-injury, you have to be careful when shooting, which is equivalent to giving the opponent more opportunities and space to use their abilities. It was precisely because he recognized the power of ninja dart that Yang Chendong made some preparations in advance. It's just that he didn't expect that the opponent would use ninja dart so decisively, which caught him off guard. After the shout, the well-trained Lung Feng soldiers threw out the torches in their hands, and the originally bright place suddenly turned into darkness. But this order was given a little too late, and there were still 4 or 5 muffled groans in the darkness. Needless to say, the Lung Feng soldiers were injured by the dart. This was the first time that the Lung Feng soldiers were injured during a mission. What's more, in the darkness, the ninjas' speed of approaching was even faster, as if they were even more certain of their home ground. "Be careful, don't shoot casually." Yang Chendong's voice had a trace of fear. Just as he finished speaking, he felt a gust of cold wind coming towards him. Instinctively, he used his feet as an axis and his body quickly fell backward. But just as his body leaned back, the wind from the blade brushed past his body. It's conceivable that if he was a little slower, he would have been injured. "Young master, be careful." Seeing that Yang Chendong was almost killed, Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei's voice quickly sounded, and then 2 figures quickly approached him. "I'm fine, be careful." After Yang Chendong regained his balance, he replied, pulled out the tri-edge bayonet from his waist, and then suddenly stabbed the black shadow in front of him. What Yang Chendong had learned was not some fancy moves, nor was it a routine. Instead, it was a killing move. It's often the fastest way to kill the opponent in the shortest time. At this moment, he just instinctively attacked, and before the ninja on the opposite side could see what was going on, he was stabbed in the heart. The moment the tri-edge bayonet was pulled out, blood suddenly gushed out, and the ninja fell to the ground with a plop. "Baka, let's attack together. Don't leave a single one alive." The leader of the ninjas saw the scene of his subordinates being killed and roared with fire in his eyes. If they were just using firearms to kill them, he could still find a reason to do so. But the fact that the ninjas were so weak in close combat made him unable to bear it, and in a fit of anger he ordered all the ninjas to attack. Under this order, dozens of shadows rushed forward in the darkness. It can be seen that at this moment, The ninjas didn't hold anything back, and all of them attacked. Chapter 266. Good timing. Seeing that the number of enemies had increased, Yang Chendong wasn't anxious. Instead, he was happy. He seemed to have been waiting for this moment. Tiger's Mane, use the flash bomb. As soon as the words fell, a dazzling pure white light flew into the air, and then the entire area was illuminated as if it was daytime. The sudden appearance of this light in the dark caught everyone off guard. The ninjas who were rushing over didn't even have time to react to what happened. They only saw the light in front of them, and in an instant, they had a feeling of blindness. It was at this time, Qiu V's first guard team emerged from the layers of protection of Lung Feng. When they appeared, each of them held a 9mm assault rifle. The Type 95-5. 8mm light machine gun is the light machine gun of the Type 95 squad gun family. It and the Type 95 automatic rifle form the squad gun family, and now it is gradually being equipped to the army. The automatic parts of the gun family are all universal, and a large proportion of the parts are universal between rifles and light machine guns. The gun uses a holdless structure. The automatic mode is pneumatic type, and the head rotates and locks. It can fire single and continuous shots. The ammunition is supplied with 30 rounds of plastic magazine and 75 rounds of rapid reloading drum. The mechanical aiming device is a keyhole type. It is equipped with a muzzle device to reduce noise and flame. Caliber 5.8mm. Muzzle speed 970 meters per second. Gun weight 3.95 kilograms. Gun length 840 millimeters. Bullet capacity 75. Effective range 600 m. The gun weighs 3.95 kilograms, excluding the drum. The gun is 0.84 m long. The effective range is 600 m, and the gun is supplied with 75 rounds of ammunition. This is the killing weapon that Yang Chendong prepared after entering Daikra. As everyone knows, ninjas have always been very fast. They are so fast that when they run, they can burst out the limit of the human body, and they can even create afterimages. Facing this kind of speed, it is very difficult to catch them just by relying on the Type 95 single shot. The flash bomb's element of surprise can indeed provide a suitable opportunity for Lung Feng to make his move. But if he doesn't grasp it well, this kind of opportunity will be wasted. The enemy will be prepared, and it will be even more difficult to achieve the element of surprise. Yang Chendong was thinking about how to seize the opportunity when there was one. Therefore, Class 95's machine gun was brought out. It had 75 bullets and a firing speed of nearly 1,000 meters per second. Very few people could survive such a firearm. Therefore, the on-duty machine gun was taken out, and along with the sound of gunfire, a series of continuous gunshots rang out. The oncoming ninjas in black clothes were like wheat fields blown by a strong wind, like chives cut by a sharp knife, crazily falling to the ground. The instant they fell to the ground, blood burst out from their bodies. In the end, each and every one of them fell to the ground with an unwilling expression. Genin and Chunin were caught off guard. None of them were spared. They became live targets and were shot to death. On the other hand, the three Jonins reacted very quickly, and because they were hiding behind the other ninjas, when facing the machine gun fire, only one of them was hit and fell to the ground and died. The other two were lucky enough to survive, and at the same time, they rushed to Yang Chendong's location. This time, they came to receive two missions. The first was to snatch the princess, Kohara Junko. The second was to kill Yang Chendong, the Duke of Loyalty. Being surrounded by so many people, it was impossible to snatch the princess away. They could only try their best to complete the second mission, which was to kill Yang Chendong. Even if they died, it would be worth it. Kid, you're courting death. Seeing that the ninjas were still unwilling to give up and wanted to threaten the young master, Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei shouted respectively and faced the two ninjas. With them here, they would never allow anyone to harm the young master. Humang took a few large steps forward and blocked a superior ninja. He pulled out the Ben Edge Army Thorn from his body and faced the ninja blade that also seemed to be sharp. The moment the two of them met, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. The other members of the cold front could only see dazzling lights and shadows. On the other side, Beta Persei also blocked another Jonin with his strong and tall body. It's just that he was not used to using weapons. When facing the sharp ninja's sword, he could only take step by step back and look for the opponent's flaws to counterattack. After retreating 5 steps, Yang Er stretched out his long arm, wanting to take advantage of his long body to snatch the ninja's sword from his opponent. But at this time, the situation suddenly changed. The Jonin who was in front of him suddenly disappeared without a trace. Ninjas were very fast, and this was the first time Yang Er came into contact with them, so when he found that his opponent was gone, he had a bad feeling in his heart, and the first thing he did was to look at his young master's position. And the worrying scene was playing out. The Jonin who had just disappeared had already come in front of Yang Chendong and handed the ninja's sword forward. The blade with a cold intent went straight to Yang Chendong's chest. It was so fast that many people only saw the shadow of the blade. Looking at this scene, Junko was so scared that she almost fainted and shouted, "No!" After that, her whole body staggered backward. Fortunately, Kobayashi had been paying attention to her and reached out to support her in time. She didn't fall to the ground and suffer any injuries. As for Yang Chendong, the sudden appearance of the blade went straight to his chest. His eyes suddenly narrowed, and then at the same time, his body in an incredible way suddenly moved to the side, letting the tip of the ninja's sword brush past his clothes. If this scene was recorded, it would be surprising to find that the tip of the sword was only a millimeter away from Yang Chendong's clothes. After his body suddenly moved to the side and avoided the attack of the sword, Yang Chendong didn't even look at it and kicked it vigorously. This kick almost burst out with 80% of Yang Chendong's strength. This blow accurately kicked the blade of the ninja's sword. The powerful force made the ninja's arm numb, and then the ninja's sword was kicked into the air. Without a weapon in his hand, the ninja's momentum couldn't help but weaken. At this moment, Beta Persei finally arrived. He roared and rushed over, then without any scruples, he used his huge body to hit the ninja's body. Bang! Under the powerful impact, the ninja's flexible but thin body flew upside down like a kite with a broken string. As he flew backwards, he spat out a mouthful of blood that splattered all over the ground. His body also turned into an arc and heavily fell to the ground. Young Master, Beta Persei is guilty. His nearly 2-meter-tall body fell to the ground with a plop, kneeling in front of Yang Chendong, causing the ground to tremble as if it had been greatly shaken. "Dong Shuai, are you okay?" Seeing that the situation seemed to be stable, Junko also broke away from Kobayashi's protection and hurriedly ran to Yang Chendong, then asked with concern, "I'm fine." Yang Chendong looked at Junko's bright and beautiful eyes and said, but just after he finished speaking, his eyes suddenly revealed a murderous aura, and then his body suddenly rotated, picking up Junko and dancing in the air. Junko was picked up, her feet were off the ground, and she felt as if her whole body was flying at this moment. And in the process of rotating, 3 shiny ninja darts were shot toward her body. Junko, who didn't understand why Yang Chendong suddenly picked her up, finally understood that this was the last attack launched by the fallen ninja. He wanted to kill her. As soon as this thought flashed through her mind, she clearly heard the feeling of the dart entering her body. Then she noticed that Yang Chendong, who was holding her, had a tight face and slightly wrinkled eyebrows. It was obvious that he was hit by the dart. Yang Chendong was hit by a dart in order to save her. At this moment, Junko couldn't stop her tears from flowing out. If it was Kobayashi who did this, she wouldn't feel the slightest bit surprised. Since he was a guard, he should be prepared to protect his master with his life. But the one who saved her was Yang Chendong, so she was moved to tears. He was the Dong Shuai. He was the loyal and courageous duke of the great Ming dynasty. He was the youngest noble in the great Ming dynasty, and also a newly risen noble. He had an uncountable amount of wealth, loyal and powerful subordinates, for beautiful wives who were loved by everyone. And why did he save her? He still had a great youth, he still had a bright future, and he didn't even have a descendant until now. How could he, as the princess of the Japanese royal family, She knows a lot about ninjas, even if she doesn't know them very well. Most of the ninja darts were stained with poison. Once thrown out, it would enter the body. Unless the antidote could be immediately obtained, otherwise, it would be a dead end. This was also the reason why ninjas were feared. Under normal circumstances, ninjas would complete certain death missions, and it was absolutely impossible for them to carry the antidote with them. In other words, Yang Chendong was hit by a ninja dart, and it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to survive. Junko's face was full of worry. After Yang Chendong's body trembled, he put her down. Immediately, Junko's shout rang in his ears. "No, you can't die. It's not worth it for you to do this for me." Junko, who was crying like a pear blossom, tightly hugged Yang Chendong's waist. She looked really pitiful. "It's a life, why isn't it worth it?" Yang Chendong looked at Junko's crying face and reached out his right hand to gently wipe her tears. "It's just not worth it. I'm just a woman, and you have a great future. It's not worth sacrificing you to save you." Junko continued to cry. Chapter 267. No. You are not a woman, you are a very beautiful woman, a woman who can make people's hearts beat. Yang Chendong looked at Junko's big eyes and said softly, "You like me?" Junko suddenly understood something and looked at Yang Chendong with a hint of gentleness. "Yes, do you like me?" Yang Chendong bravely admitted, then looked at Junko and asked seriously. In Yang Chendong's eyes, Junko was not only cute and beautiful, but also had a tenacious character that deeply attracted him. Especially when he knew that this woman learned a lot of knowledge and suffered a lot of unimaginable pain in order to strengthen the Japanese royal family, he felt even more distressed. Such a beautiful girl should be protected, instead of fighting like a man, or even risking her life. Junko didn't know how to answer for a moment, and her eyes flashed with a hint of panic. She was taught from a young age that she couldn't easily like a person, because she had a very important mission, and before she completed her mission, she couldn't easily say the word love. Seeing that Junko was avoiding something, Yang Chendong knew that she still had a psychological barrier, and if he couldn't take this opportunity to break through, it would be even more difficult to make her reveal her true feelings next time. For this reason, he continued to ask, "What's wrong? Even now, can't you tell me the truth?" "I like you too." After being reminded, Junko suddenly remembered that Yang Chendong had been poisoned by the ninja dart, and perhaps he wouldn't be able to live happily. At this time, what was the point of confessing her true feelings to him? "I like you too." Finally, Junko's psychological barrier was broken under this special circumstance. She said to Yang Chendong, "I like you, and I have liked you since a long time ago. Even if you have other women, I am willing to be one of them, but, all right, that's enough." Hearing Junko's confession, Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction. He then released his hand from Junko's slender waist, turned around and walked towards the jonin who was groaning on the ground. Yang Chendong walked in front of the jonin, and a handgun appeared in his hand. With a slight movement of his right index finger, a gunshot was heard, and a bloody hole appeared in between the jonin's eyebrows. Blood was flowing out non-stop. After finishing off the jonin who threw the ninja dart, Yang Chendong slowly turned his head and looked at Beta Persei and said, "I have taught you more than once that being merciful to the opponent is being cruel to ourselves. But just now, this man who was about to die launched his final attack and almost took your young master's life. This time, all of you are at fault. Do you know your crimes?" His voice was loud and clear, especially in this silent night. It spread far and wide, and it clearly drilled into the ears of every Lung Feng. "We are guilty." The sound of people kneeling on the ground was heard. Whether it was Beta Persei, Tiger's Mane who just killed a jonin, Xiao Vi and the others from the first guard, or the Lung Feng who came out to carry out the mission, they all knelt on the ground in an orderly manner. Everyone's eyes flashed with shame and regret. Yang Chendong didn't seem to be satisfied with everyone kneeling down and admitting their mistakes, nor did he intend to forgive them. Instead, he continued to say, "Today's matter will be written in the history of Lung Feng, and it will make all future generations vigilant." It's an honor that every one of your names will be recorded in the history of Lungfeng. This may be a disgrace, but since you are following this young master, you have to do your best. If you don't have the ability to do so, or if you don't have enough self-awareness, then you can apply to leave. This young master won't force you. Now, go and kill all those assassins. Remember, it's not a disgrace to kill a dead person or someone who is about to die. On the contrary, it's a way to take responsibility for yourself and respect your opponent. Do you understand? Understood. Dozens of people answered in unison. Although the effect of the flare had already worn off, the place returned to darkness. But everyone still lowered their heads in shame. Today, their names will be remembered by future generations, and they will be written in the list of shame. This kind of action was equivalent to taking half of their lives. Some people even had the idea of not wanting to live anymore, and wanted to die to show their loyalty. But in the end, they didn't do so, because everyone knew that running away was the behavior of the weak. The real strong weren't afraid of failure. They should face it head-on, then correct, and become stronger. After being reprimanded, Tiger's mane and others quickly took action, and all the ninjas who had been dead for a while on the ground were stabbed. All the corpses were almost poked at this moment, and the smell of blood filled the air for a while, but no one showed mercy or even sympathy. Everything was as the young master had said. Being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. Looking at everyone's actions, Yang Chendong's eyes flashed with a gratified look. These people have been with him for a long time, and it was inevitable that they would become arrogant and willful. It was necessary to teach them a lesson at the right time. Not to mention, today's matter was really dangerous. If he hadn't been prepared in advance and wore a bulletproof vest, Yang Chendong's life would have been taken by the poisonous dart just now. Lung Feng's performance made Yang Chendong satisfied and relieved him. But Junko, who had just confessed, was still looking at Yang Chendong with an incredulous look. Perhaps she thought that this Dong Shui would die after being hit by the poison dart. That was why she was very surprised to see him talking so confidently as if nothing had happened. What's wrong? Do you want something to happen to me? Yang Chendong had already arrived in front of Junko, and when he saw her expression of disbelief, he asked with a magnetic and caring voice. How can you be fine? Didn't you just get hit by the poisonous dart? Junko asked instinctively, blinking her big eyes, looking forward to Yang Chendong's explanation. Yang Chendong never liked to explain. Because only when he did something wrong, he would explain, and only when he faced stupid people would he explain. First, he didn't do anything wrong, and second, Junko was very smart, so such an explanation was even more unnecessary. Idiot, how can a small poisonous dart hurt this young master? You should have heard of my legend, I am the god of war, invincible. But you, why did you suddenly leave Yang village without even saying goodbye? Do you know, if I didn't find out that you were gone and brought people here in time, I'm afraid you would be dead now. While talking, Yang Chendong slowly approached. When the distance between them was less than an arm's length, he squatted down slightly, stretched out his hands, and abruptly lifted Junko up into the air. Her body suddenly left the ground. This change surprised Junko, who was still in the state of thinking. From childhood to adulthood, the only one who dared to do this to her was her father. Now being carried by Yang Chendong, who was only a few years older than her and was also young, it would be strange if she didn't shout in surprise. Just as she shouted, before she could do anything to struggle, Yang Chendong's caring voice sounded in her ears. It's so cold, but you're still wearing so little, aren't you afraid of getting sick? Alright, my embrace is still warm. Now, you just have to stay in there obediently. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Chendong took large strides and turned around, heading in the direction of the Yang family manor. On both sides of him were Captain Chiu Vi and the members of the first guard squad. Such a scene, such an atmosphere, made Junko, who originally wanted to struggle, forget everything. Because Yang Chendong's arms were so warm that she couldn't bear to leave. More importantly, she found that she actually liked this feeling, this temperature, this breath. Junko didn't make any struggle, letting Yang Chendong carry her to Yang village. Kobayashi, who was behind her, didn't have such good treatment. Beta Persei strode in front of him with a fierce face. Do you want to walk on your own, or do you want me to carry you? I'll walk on my own. Kobayashi felt the strong anger coming from Beta Persei's body. He had already experienced this person's power, so he was really afraid. He was really afraid that if he answered a little slower, the other party would heavily injure him and then carry him back to Yang Village. In that case, even if he was lucky enough to not die, he would probably lose a layer of skin. Tiger's Mane and the Lung Feng stayed behind to clean up the battlefield. This was also something that the elite Lung Feng were very good at. Soon, a big pit appeared, and the bodies of the 43 ninjas were buried in the ground. When the soil was finally covered, after a night of cold wind, it would be difficult to find this place. After only half an hour, the originally lively place became quiet again. When the wind blew, the place returned to the silence of the night. The Japanese diplomatic mission in the capital. The sky was almost bright, but there was still no news. Kimura Yoshida was furious. He raised his hand and slapped Captain Qi Shang's face. He roared angrily, "What the hell is going on? Why did you send so many people, but none of them came back? Give me an explanation." Qi Shang lowered his head and answered, but his face showed that he was very wronged. This was Kimura's plan, and he was the one who sent the ninjas. Now he was asked to explain. What could he say? What could he explain? Investigate, send someone to investigate. I want to know where these people went. I want to know if Yang Village still exists. Kimura Yoshida's angry voice continued to sound. Qi Shang left the room as if he had been granted amnesty, and then a large number of people were sent out. As soon as the gate opened, they would go out of the city to investigate and inquire about the news. For the matter of 43 ninjas disappearing without any reason, even Ikigami was very curious. Chapter 268. The attack of the ninjas was originally a secret. Even he was the last to know about it. Then who was it that leaked the news? Let them all be wiped out and none of them return. Also, what kind of existence was Yangjia Village? Why did they always suffer heavy losses every time they dealt with this loyal prince? What was even worse was that the appearance of the ninjas couldn't be told to the outside world. In other words, whether these ninjas were all killed or not, he couldn't reason with the great Ming dynasty as an envoy of Japan. After arranging for Qi Shang to investigate the disappearance of the ninjas, Kimura Yoshida went straight to the Ministry of Rights in a palanquin. Today, the great Ming dynasty was still in its prosperous period. As for Japan, it was still a huge monster. But this didn't mean that they didn't dare to speak to the strong. On the other hand, General Ashikaga Yoshimasa, who stood behind Kimura Yoshida, belonged to the hardline faction. Perhaps it was because they grew up in Japan. They were used to being short-sighted. They were used to thinking that everything revolved around them. With this thought in mind, Kimura Yoshida was instructed before this trip. He must return to Princess Junko. For this purpose, he could even threaten the great Ming dynasty. Under the policy of banning the sea, not long after the great Ming dynasty was defeated by the Wala, the great Ming dynasty was divided into two. He was confident that the great Ming dynasty wouldn't be willing to offend them and treat them as enemies. In the Ministry of Rights, the chief official on duty today was Left Assistant Minister He Wenyuan. He became a scholar when he was young, and then he finally stepped on the path of Jinshi. He became one of the representatives of scholars and one of the supporters of Confucianism. He was still very principled. When He Wenyuan saw the arrogant Kimura Yoshida in the reception room and learned that this person actually asked the great Ming dynasty to unconditionally release the previous envoy Aoki Yuki and return the Japanese merchants who were imprisoned in Yangjia Village to them, He Wenyuan's face became very ugly. Emissary Mu, Emissary Greenwood committed a crime in the capital of my great Ming, almost injuring an important official of my great Ming. The implications of this matter are too great for me to say anything about, so it's best not to speak of it. As for your second request, I don't know what's going on with that Japanese businessman you mentioned. However, as far as I know, there aren't any merchants imprisoned in Yang Manor. I'm very suspicious of the reliability and veracity of your source of information. Faced with the aggressive Kimura Yoshida, He Wenyuan retorted. Putting aside the fact that Yang Chendong's writing style was excellent, He Wenyuan admired it. With Dong Shuai's reputation alone, why would he need to confine anyone? Not to mention that he was a merchant from another race. If it had been someone else, it would have been possible. After all, businessmen were rich, and they could always get some benefits by capturing them. But does Dong Shuai lack money? Baka, are you doubting my words? Do you not believe me? Being blocked by He Wenyuan's words, Kimura Yoshida was naturally very angry, and his tone naturally carried the fire of anger. This isn't a matter of whether I believe you or not. This official is only speaking based on the facts. Since you don't have any evidence, forgive this official for being unable to believe your words. Also, please pay attention to your wording. As far as I know, the word baka doesn't mean anything good, right? He Wenyuan didn't understand Japanese, but looking at Kimura Yoshida's expression, he guessed that it shouldn't be something good, so he reminded him. Here, it has to be said that the ancient people of China were broad-minded. They always regarded themselves as a great country, and in accordance with the principle of broad-mindedness, they rarely did anything aggressive. When they were strong, their opponents would often submit to them and pay tribute, and the dirty things they had done before would be forgotten. And once China entered a period of weakness, those small countries that once seemed obedient would jump out one by one, wanting to get a share of the benefits. Under the cycle, the country's territory was getting smaller and smaller, and the feeling it gave people was getting more and more kind. Because Kimura Yoshida understood this, he wasn't afraid of the Great Ming. First, he would scare them to achieve his goal. If the tough method didn't work, he would bow his head and admit his mistake, and there would be no danger. How could a country that forbade the sea pose a threat to Japan, which was surrounded by the sea? With this in mind, Kimura Yoshida naturally didn't take He Wenyuan's reminder seriously. On the contrary, his eyes narrowed, and a cold light flashed in them. Assistant Minister this ambassador received the order of our Emperor and General Ashikaga Yoshimasa to bring the Japanese businesswoman back to Japan. In order to achieve this goal, we have prepared everything. Do you know everything? If you refuse to hand her over, it will be a contempt to our country, and this is something that our Emperor and General can't allow. If you must do this, then we don't mind gathering thousands of warships. When the time comes, if the army really presses on the border, I don't know if the newly ascended emperor can withstand it. The more Kimura Yoshida spoke, the more ruthless and murderous Kimura Yoshida's voice became. When He Wenyuan heard these words, he trembled all over. Scholars rely on their knowledge and mouth, and they are not proficient in things like war. Otherwise, the ancient people wouldn't have left behind a famous saying, when a scholar meets a soldier, it's impossible to reason with him. Kimura Yoshida suddenly said that they might declare war on the Great Ming because of this matter, which made He Wenyuan realize the importance of this matter. At this moment, this matter was not something he could handle. After a moment of hesitation, he replied, "All right, I understand your request. I will report this matter to our emperor. At the very least, I'll have to ask the envoy to wait for 2 days to see what the outcome will be." Seeing that the threat seemed to be effective, Kimura Yoshida nodded happily. "All right, this envoy will wait for news from your country, but please hurry. After all, this envoy has a good temper, but it doesn't mean that our emperor and general have the same temper." The meeting was over. Kimura Yoshida left the Ministry of Rights Yamen with a smug look on his face. Soon, He Wenyuan's sedan also left the Yamen and went straight to Minister Hu Zhao's residence. He Wenyuan's sudden visit made Hu Zhao, who was resting at home, change into an official's robe and receive the guest in the main hall. Needless to say, Hu Zhao could feel that something big must have happened for the left assistant minister to come in such a hurry. Sure enough, when He Wenyuan explained his meeting with Kimura Yoshida in detail, Hu Zhao's eyes wrinkled. According to the ancestral teachings of the Great Ming, that is, the great Emperor Yongle, Zhu Di, the great emperor of the Ming dynasty, personally led his troops on a 10,000-li expedition to sweep away the Desert Empress for the second time and return to the imperial court in Beijing. Our dynasty's national power is supreme, it surpasses the ancient times. It controls the north, invades the west, the south, the west, and the barbarians of the West. These words were, no marriage, no reparations, no ceding of land, and no tribute. There was also the meaning of the emperor guarding the country and the emperor dying for the country. It was just that the Great Ming was now divided into two and had just fought a great battle with the Walla. It could be said that the Great Ming had suffered heavy losses, and the elites were all dead. Although the military recruitment had now begun, it would take time to recover to its peak. At this moment, if Japan attacked the border at sea, it would undoubtedly be a headache for the Daizong emperor. We can't fight. Hu Shao hesitated for a moment before giving an answer that was close to the bottom line. This answer was not different from He Wenyuan's. He also did not want to have any friction with Japan. If he backed down, he would have to agree to the other party's demands and conditions. Since this matter involved the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, he was powerless to do anything about it. Therefore, he explained, Minister, no matter what, since this matter has happened, we should first report it to the Emperor and inform the Duke of Loyalty and Courage. In the end, this was He Wenyuan's real intention. Using the opportunity of reporting to the Emperor, he expressed a certain amount of goodwill to Yang Qindong. Naturally, this favor would not be small. That's right. Hu Shao had been an official for many years, so how could he not understand? He immediately understood and nodded with a smile. I will go to the palace to meet the Emperor and send someone to inform the Duke of Loyalty. Minister He, please go back first. The Ministry of Rights still needs someone to be on duty. Yes, Minister. Since he had sent out his goodwill, He Wenyuan naturally should also leave. After the two of them greeted each other, they went their separate ways. Imperial Palace Main Hall. Hu Shao was standing in front of the Daizong Emperor, Zhu Qiyu, and recounted everything that He Wenyuan had reported. After he finished speaking, he quickly closed his mouth. The Emperor needed time to think, and as an official, he only needed to report the matter. As for how to deal with it, it would be up to the Emperor to decide. How dare you? After listening to Hu Zhao's explanation, Zhu Qiyu immediately slammed the dragon table angrily, his chest heaving up and down violently. It was obvious that he was extremely angry at this moment. No matter what, the blood of the Zhu family still flowed in his body, so he still had some courage. When the Great Ming Dynasty was at its peak, Japan, modern-day Japan, was one of the Great Ming Dynasty's vassal states, and also one of the non-conquering states. When were they not obedient children in front of the Great Ming Dynasty? Only a few years had passed, so how could they have the courage to clamor? At this moment, Zhu Qiyu really wanted to lift the ban on the sea in anger. He believed that with the Great Ming Dynasty's national strength, they would be able to become one of the overlords of the sea again in a few years. At that time, Japan would always be under the attack of the Great Ming Dynasty. However, this thought was just a moment of anger, and he quickly calmed his anger. It was not because of anything else, but because the new army had just been established, the firearms battalion had been rebuilt, and new firearms were also being developed. All of these required a lot of manpower and material resources. As a result, he did not have the ability to do other things. Chapter 269. Your Majesty, please calm down. In my humble opinion, since this matter involves the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, let him handle it. Chief Steward Jin Ing, who was standing to the side, saw Zhu Qiyu's weakness under his anger. He quickly gave Zhu Qiyu a way out of the situation. When Hu Shao heard that the matter was to be handled by Yang Qindong, he immediately understood what Jin Ing meant. He wanted to speak up to stop him, but Zhu Qiyu had already spoken. That's right. Since this matter involves the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, let him handle it first. Zhu Qiyu knew that this was a way out of the situation. He immediately took advantage of the situation and pushed the troublesome matter out of the way. Let Yang Qindong handle it. If he was weak, then his title as the god of war would become a joke. When it spread throughout the world, it would be a serious blow to his reputation. As the emperor, he could be happy and take the initiative. On the other hand, if he wanted to be tough, then the matter would be left to him. When the time came, as the emperor, he only needed to say that the national treasury was empty. At that time, Yang Chendong would be the one who was in a difficult position, not him. Zhu Qiyu was very adept at using the tactic of retreating in order to advance. While Ji Ning praised the emperor's wisdom, he sneered in his heart. He wanted to see how Yang Chendong would solve this problem this time. When he had defeated Walla, he had relied on advanced firearms. But Japan was far away at sea. Without a large warship, what could he do? How could he create a storm with one turn of the hand? Jin Ing was even prepared to immediately spread Kimura Yoshida's words and announce to the public that the emperor had given the authority to deal with this matter to Zhong Dangong. He wanted to use this opportunity to make things difficult for this Zhong Dangong who didn't put him in his eyes. If Yang Chendong did not handle it well and lost the support of the people, he would have countless ways and excuses to punish him. In this way, all of Yang Chendong's assets would be flooded into the national treasury. As the one who carried out the order, he would certainly benefit greatly from it. Under Jin Ying's suggestion and Zhu Qiyu's tacit approval, Kimura Yoshida's incident quickly began to spread. It didn't take long for the cause and effect of the incident to spread all over the streets. In the Yang Chendong's manor 15 li south of the city, Yang Chendong also saw the emperor's decree. There seemed to be a tacit understanding between them. Yang Chendong was not willing to see Zhu Qiyu, and Zhu Qiyu did not seem to want to see Yang Chendong either. If there was anything, the eunuchs would come and pass on the edict. Are you trying to make things difficult for me by leaving this matter to me? Looking at the golden imperial edict on the desk, Yang Chendong smiled faintly. In the study, Junko had already dressed up and was standing beside Yang Chendong. When she came back last night, she caught a cold. Later, she fell asleep in Yang Chendong's warm embrace. When she opened her eyes again, she found that she was still in Yang Chendong's arms. With a red face, Junko struggled to get up and then thanked Yang Chendong. Seeing that you caught a cold and hid in my arms, I didn't call you. Come, here is a bowl of ginger soup. It's still hot, drink it to get rid of the cold. Yang Chendong saw Junko struggling to get up, laughed, and reached out to hug her again. Then a bowl of hot ginger soup was delivered to Junko's mouth. From childhood to adulthood, although it could be said that Junko was used to having her clothes stretched out and food served, she was still not used to being served like this by a big man. But considering that this was Dong Shuai's kindness, she couldn't refuse. So, she reached out and drank the whole bowl of ginger soup. After doing this, Junko remembered that she had just woken up, so her makeup must be messy. So, she quickly went out to clean up. When she came back, before she could say a few words to Yang Chendong, Zhu Qiyu's imperial decree arrived. Junko was a very smart girl. The moment she saw the imperial decree, she thought of a lot of things. When she thought of the things she had heard before, she said with a surprised face, "Your great Ming emperor is so powerful. He clearly wants to push the trouble to you. Don't say that about our emperor." Yang Chendong smiled and reached out to touch Junko's nose, and then said, "How can I not know what the emperor means? If he didn't do this, I would have intervened." "Is it because of me?" Junko looked at Yang Chendong curiously. Taking the initiative to attract trouble, she really couldn't think of why the smart Dong Shuai would make such a choice. If there must be a reason, then it was probably because of her. After all, Kimura Yoshida wanted her, didn't he? Yes and no. Yang Chendong gave an ambiguous answer. Few people who were born in China in the future had a good impression of Japan. Most of them even had a trace of resentment in their hearts, so they were called angry youths. Unfortunately, Yang Dong in his previous life was one of them. In this life, he became Yang Chendong, but this kind of thinking didn't change at all. Yang Chendong had both love and hate for this island country. What he hated was what they had done to China, and what he loved was their positive spirit. Perhaps because of the geographical location, they clearly knew that it was not easy to live. If they wanted to live a better life, they could only obtain resources through external expansion. The environment limited their thinking, so they had to do something to the nearby China. This was something that even Yang Chendong couldn't change. And if he didn't want to see the scene of killing each other, perhaps there was a good way, that was, assimilation, or a more vulgar way, annexation. As long as he annexed Japan and took it as his own, then his own people wouldn't fight with each other. In order to achieve this goal, Kimura Yoshida had to pass this hurdle, and if he used it well, he could have a legitimate reason and excuse to take the initiative to attack. This was the fundamental idea of Yang Chendong to intervene in this matter. But Junko must have thought that it was because of her, so Yang Chendong didn't need to explain anything. He gave a yes and no, but in Junko's ears, it made her very grateful. She naturally didn't know the ambition of the man in front of her. She simply thought that he was looking for trouble to protect her. At this moment, her love for Yang Chendong in her heart increased. A man who could take on such a big thing for her, even risking his life to save her, such a man was worthy of her life. Come, arrange something, I want to see Kimura Yoshida. Yang Chendong's voice sounded in the study, and soon the voice of Tiger's Mane came from outside. Young master, we will arrange it. The news that Kimura Yoshida, an envoy of Japan, threatened to invade the great Ming dynasty spread like a whirlwind through the streets of the capital. For a time, everyone was talking about this matter. In the streets and alleys, there were always people in twos and threes talking about it. Perhaps because Japan was one of the vassal states of the great Ming dynasty, and because the capital was not near the sea, the people here didn't feel the trouble of Japan invading the sea, and there was no worry on their faces. They thought that it was nothing more than a small country that needed to be taught a lesson. How dare it provoke the great Ming dynasty? Because they were ignorant, they were fearless. Ordinary people knew too little about the outside world. What they knew was limited, so they were fearless. However, for some scholars and businessmen who had traveled far and wide, because they had seen and heard a lot, they would not be so relaxed. The Soaring Heaven restaurant had once been a rather famous restaurant in the capital. A group of noble scions had gathered here, and their sources of information were much wider than those of the common folk. It was precisely because of this that the discussion on this issue was particularly intense. In the hall, a tall and fat young man was expressing his opinion at this moment. Around him, there were about a dozen young masters or young master in brocade robes. Just from their clothes, one could tell that these people were either rich or noble. Speaking of me, Japan has always been paying tribute to the Ming dynasty and is one of the tributary states to the great Ming dynasty. How dare they threaten the great Ming dynasty? In the end, it's because someone stepped on their tail. As the saying goes, even a rabbit bites when cornered, let alone a sea country. This person's voice was clear and precise, and after he finished speaking, the crowd began to cheer. Brother Bai's words are extremely correct. Then based on your words, as long as we don't push them too hard, Japan won't negotiate with us with such an attitude? There was no lack of flatterers in the crowd. On the surface, they were asking for advice, but in reality, they were praising. It can't be said to be completely correct. It's just the words of one side. Reality should be as such. As long as we can satisfy their demands and conditions, I presume that the situation can take a turn for the better at any time. The man called Brother Bai chuckled, his face flushed red with pride and excitement. Very good. You said it yourself that it's just the words of one side, and in reality, it really isn't entirely correct. A voice suddenly rang out, resounding through the main hall of the immortal abode. This voice caused the smug Brother Bai's expression to turn extremely unsightly. Looking at the source of the voice, one could see a handsome young master in a white robe. When he saw who had spoken, Brother Bai's expression became even more gloomy. Wang Si, what do you mean by this? The person who had spoken was a student of the Yang Clan Academy, Wang Si. He was also the grandson of the current Minister of Appointments, Wang Ji. Studying in the Yang Clan Academy wasn't all about studying hard every day. There were days off. In Yang Chendong's words, this was called striking a balance between work and rest. At the same time, he also encouraged his students to delve deeper into life, into the midst of the common people, to experience the various facets of life and understand the needs of the common people. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.